All right, so maybe you could go ahead and do that and tell us about the substation, and then tell us about the requirements for the 4 firemen.
So
And,
what were you looking for the North Hadley substation?
well, so I didn't know anything about the North Hadley substation, other than the fact that there's been money borrowed to do that, and taxpayers are paying for that.
Correct.
So now we're going back to those same taxpayers and saying, oh, we need more stuff, so we have to know what we're doing here.
Okay. So I had a feeling that this was gonna come up, and Dave and I have discussed it, probably at length. Basically, in my opinion, the cart was put before the horse when the town voted to sell the North Hadley Hall and Fire Station. So the original capital proposal was to do some minimal repairs based upon the DRA report, which was it was scaled down even more. So it was to build out the doors, add some space on the rear of the building so that we could move our engine 3, which is in our center station, up to the north station. Because when we get a new rescue pumper in, the second newest truck moves up north, but that truck doesn't fit because the new trucks now, we can't design them to fit in that small of a station anymore. So that was the original
And there's physically
capital proposal.
not enough space in the, I'll call it the in-town fire station?
The central
Safety
station is completely full.
Okay, so that's,
So we are downsizing. We have put 2 trucks into 1 by purchasing a rescue pumper, but we don't have any room for expansion right now. The second thing is it's critical that North Station be in service because there's only 2 full-time firefighters right now. So we are relying on 22 call force members, which is down from 27 last year. So the age of the call force firefighter is extremely difficult, and recruiting efforts have been exhaustive with very little fruit coming back from it. So again, the North Station needs to be in service. The town went to the town meeting and said we want to build a new station in the ball field. They had me as a professional person represented on the ad hoc committee that was put together. We reviewed multiple different locations. A secondary location was proposed to the town, which was voted down. So they looked at the ball field next to the station, and that was approved at town meeting with all the other articles. So the question had been asked of me from numerous townspeople of what the priority of the fire department is. The priority is staffing, but until we can fully staff a full-time fire department, 365 days a year, 24/7, that North Station needs to be in place. And even if you were to have a full-time department, my professional opinion and the professional opinion of chiefs before me is that station needs to be in place even if there's a full-time department. So that's the lowdown on the North Station proposal. So now we're looking like now we're coming back for additional funding when we are part of that. We feel that we need that presence in North Hadley. The town voted on that, and now we're asking for what our original priority was, which is staffing.
that is a tough nut to crack.
So I also I applied for a fiscal year 16 SAFER grant through the federal government. It's the AFG, Assistance to Firefighter Grant, for staffing. I put in for full-time staffing to the total of $555,000 included salaries and benefits for the 2 years that they pay for outright. That grant has now changed. They've gone back to a step down where they pay you off and they don't give you the full funding every year. They wean you off of it, basically. We were not successful in that. It came back with the number one issue being you need to show us more of a financial need for this. So there's very specific questions in the grant based upon what your operating budget is, what your percentage of your budget is of the total budget, what your foreclosure rates are, everything. And Hadley has a very, very good record of funding and money and stabilization. And not that I'm not going to keep applying for it, but it's an extremely competitive grant across
So
the
what you're
nation.
telling me is that towns that are irresponsible and screw themselves up apply for this? and
So,
get it.
yeah, well, towns that just don't have the tax base. I
Yeah.
mean, we're pretty lucky to have, the city of Holyoke gets quite a substantial amount of funding from the Safer Grant, because they don't have that tax base.
I think
And
Ware was one of the towns that got it, Orange also got it.
Aren't Ware and Orange larger than we are? I mean, is everyone except Hatfield larger than we are?
We're very
No.
small.
We're
Right.
small, but we are wealthy in some cases.
We're small in what people consider our population. So our listed population of 5,000, just over 5,000, is considered small. But if you look at what we're protecting, so the actual cost of the businesses and the actual number of people that are in town during daytime hours and at night now, with the number of rental properties that we have with 10, 15 students living in the apartments, you're looking at a daytime population of 30 to 50,000 people that we're trying to protect.
Can we get
which
some of
we're
those students to volunteer in the fire department?
We've, actually, the problem is it costs the town for us to put a firefighter through the actual training, and to get them geared up, you're looking at a $10,000 cost of the town. So for us to do that and have them not committed to the town, if they're here for 1 or 2 years, if you're lucky, plus, it's based upon what they have for time, and most of them, they don't wanna commit to that. We do have, we are trying to tap into the resources like Amherst does with their student force, and see if we can get some of their folks. But the problem is that we don't have the ability to house students right now, and that's one of the, that's one of the benefits at their North Station, is they
And-
house some of them.
This is a little tangent-y question, but if somebody volunteers and you put them through that $10,000 training,
Mhm.
can then they march off to some other town and get a job as a professional firefighter? Is it the training that's similar?
It's just like we have the same issue in the police department. We train, we have people that will stay, we try and get a commitment out of them. The Mass Call Volunteer Program had a 3-year, they received some federal funding to put out, really promoting call volunteer programs with some scholarships for college. We actually had 3 students that we funded their $4,500 per year of their college funding through that Mass Call program. And there is a commitment to it, but it's a brief commitment. And then, they kind of did it as, a lot of them are going off. We just lost one to Wilbraham, Jeff Christek. He was one of our call force firefighters. He's now full-time in Wilbraham. Alex Dwyer was on the department for 3-4 years. He got some of the grant funding, but he went off to the Coast Guard, so he completed his commitment to us, and now he's, trying to get into the Coast Guard. So,
So it's basically the call force is not tenable moving forward.
it's extreme, and I had, you were at the last meeting, I had Stephen Barstow, our captain, and he has a full-time job milking cows every day. A lot of these folks are out of town now. We don't have the staff working at the DPW. Our one person that is our steadiest, Stanley Sadlowski, he works for the DPW, but he's retiring in December. So we're losing one of the person who responds to the most calls besides maybe myself. And I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna fill his shoes, but he's at the point now where he's not an interior attack firefighter. He'll run the pump, which is still important, but we don't have the people that can stay in town now. And then they wanna have time with their families, and the amount of training that we have to do it's insane. And it's really hard to keep up with it all. So,
What do they do when you're on vacation?
Or you don't go on vacation.
well, I finally went on a 2-week vacation to Germany, but it's hair raising, and luckily I took a long time before I left, and I actually scheduled it so folks were in line. Nick McKenna, my full-time fire lieutenant, was taking care of business during the day, and I reached out to all the local chiefs and said, if there's any kind of calls, I've already told our dispatch center that they're gonna be calling you right off the bat to respond here and assist with, command and control of these incidents. We don't have the bench strength anymore. I have myself as the chief, I have Steve Barstow as a captain, and I have 6 lieutenants.
And they're all volunteer.
They are all call force. I have 1 full-time firefighter lieutenant of fire prevention, and that's Nick. And he's 40 hours a week. He comes back, and We don't have a very big overtime budget for him, I think it's 30 hours. And he used that up in the first couple months, because he's coming back, you know, on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm salaried, so, I mean, on an average, I'm working 60+ hours a week, and I get it. I took the position, he does the same thing. It is what it is.
We're both here
but-
at this time of day, for one thing.
But I can tell you, it's come to the point, and I told David that there's nothing left to give anymore. It's at a point now where, and you can ask my wife, because she
Oh,
makes
I've
it
heard
very
about
clear.
this.
You
Don't
know,
worry.
you try to watch a soccer game or a basketball game, and you got the pager up to your ear, just praying that somebody's gonna sign on the air. And usually it's 1 or 2 firefighters if you're lucky. And you're asking them to go to a fire alarm activation at Greenleaf's where there's 40 units. And yes, 99% of the time it's somebody who's burnt their hot dog or whatever. But that one time it's not. That's probably one of the scariest things that I have in our risk analysis, that we've really been working and training with them over there so that they understand what they have to do. But it's, you know, it's nonstop stress. And it's not a healthy environment not having backup, so.
So when you get a call, just one call that comes in for something like that over there, you need how many people? You need at least 2 to be on the truck? Or one person can take the truck?
Well, the NFPA standard, if we wanna go by OSHA and NFPA standard, you're supposed to have 4 on the truck.
Oh,
So that's without an officer responding. I'm a working chief, so if I'm responding, I'm one of what should be 4. So it's a 2 in, 2 out rule. So if we get to the scene of a fire alarm activation, we're supposed to have 2 firefighters that can go into the building and 2 firefighters that are outside of the building able to go in and get the 2 that no longer can get out.
Oh.
So we are not complying with OSHA or an FPA standard this time. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, when we have a fire alarm activation where all these guys who've worked all day are sleeping, and they know 99% of the time it's that, you know, false alarm, it's really hard for them
To
at
get up,
$15 an hour to get up, and, you know, it usually takes about half an hour, 45 minutes to get down there, get the truck, go get, reset, check everything. And we have specific protocols. We check the room. So we're going to the room, we're checking all the floors. We don't just go down there and push a button. We make sure everything's good.
All right, tell us about the number of the firefighters you're asking for, and, you know, how fixed is that? Like, does 2 help? You know, I know you're asking for 4, but, you know, we're bringing the towels out here to try and find out what we can do.
And I understand that. So obviously, I'm not gonna say no, that 2 wouldn't help, but it doesn't help with the rotation that we're trying to do to cover the greatest number of calls. So 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. in Hadley, 70% of the calls are occurring, Monday through Sunday. So the proposal was for 4 full-time to create a 4 on, 4 off rotation with 2. Then there would be myself and Nick, so that would roll us out with 4. We also have Taryn Harriman, our office manager, who's there 15 hours a week. And if she's there during a call, she's also certified firefighter 1. She'll jump on the truck if she's there. But 15 hours a week isn't that much. So,
Then if another call comes in while everyone's out.
correct. So that was the theory behind it. As the fire chief, I put it in the annual report. It's my job to report to the community the status. We're up 9% in calls. We're responding to 1,100. We responded to 1,163 calls this year, and 373 of them were medical calls. So subtract that from 1,063. That's still a lot of calls. We responded to 42 fires. That includes all different. Okay, that's not my car.
That's the other chief going.
That includes brush fires, chimney fires, car fires. We had, you know, improper disposal of cigarettes. I mean, you would be surprised the number of different calls that we go to. Hazardous materials calls, mountain rescues, river searches, bringing the police out to the island to break up parties. You name it, we do it. And
Go back, bringing the police?
we have a lot of
We
folks
have
that
a
like
Navy.
having parties out on Mitch's Island, and we have the boat is our boat. So you have to be certified on It's not
So
an
the
easy
police
thing.
have to
driving.
call you?
The
Well, I
police
mean, you're in the
dispatch
same
us.
building,
Yep.
yeah, that
Yep.
go and fetch
Correct.
them across?
Yep. So we bring them across. Lost hikers, continuous, you see it in the news all the time. We try and educate them on not going hiking, you know, in early spring with your shorts and sneakers on when all the trails are ice and you slip and break your ankle. You know, we're doing pretty intense rope rescue. We're bringing in state assets, local assets, regional assets. We're also part of the mutual aid program, so we're responding to Northampton, Amherst, Sunderland, South Hadley. We responded with a mutual aid task force for brush fire in Orange. So we had 2 firefighters that were gone for 8 hours to Orange with one of our vehicles to assist. And that happens usually at least once or twice a year.
So in that case, when that happens, what happens if there's a call back home?
Exactly. So I can tell you, we were in Northampton this past week, and we went over with a truck of 4, which included me. I was in my car. When we got to Northampton, we were covering their station for them. Basically, what we had left in town at the time was Stanley and Jason Hall, who works for the highway department, and then I committed back to town, so we would have 3. And then one of Northampton's captains got on our truck over there to round off that truck for them. And then they were at the scene doing overhaul. So luckily, Nick and Taryn was in that day, and then we had one, Ricky Bermucci works in town sometimes doing construction, and luckily he was available that day. But again, there's times when we're going out, we try not to strip the town, but they're doing it for us, and we have to be there. We
But they're
have to
much bigger,
recommend.
so if they send a truck over here, they're not destitute over there.
The only town that's like that is Northampton. Amherst is not. So I can tell you right now that we've been to numerous calls in Amherst where we're the second truck there, because they're doing recall. They're trying to get their call force, their student force, you know, committed to it, and it takes time. Really takes time. So,
To reiterate.
Yes.
So you need a minimum of 4 to make the rotation work, to be able to have 4 on every call, or any given call, to be able to be, was it OSHA compliant?
yes.
See, that's the important bit, because if you're not compliant,
I'm wondering if there's any funding currently that we have, or potential funding, state aid or anything that is reliant on being compliant with that.
That's the safer grant. So we're not an OSHA state, so we're trying to comply with a standard. So NFPA standard 1710 and 1720 give us a standard. Obviously, if something happens, then it's probably a different ballgame, because everybody's going to be saying, well, you're not complying with this. It's in our MRI report, the fire department study. They bring that fact up. So you now have a report that's stating it. So it's like I said, it's a little bit hairy. Not to say that during the day, we might not have a call force person that's home that might be able to respond.
But to guarantee.
But to guarantee, basically, and again, it's to get 2 people on the truck, and then Nick, who's our fire prevention lieutenant, and then me. So we're again relying on still 2 people that are supposed to be doing inspections, and a chief who's supposed to be doing administrative duties. You know, so it's lightening the load. So if it's a car accident or a medical call, I'm not gonna have to drop every time. But if it's a structure fire, we're still all gonna be going out the door.
Of those calls, how many are those to the school?
I'm sorry?
Of the calls that you've said, 1,100 or whatever, how many are those for the schools?
I'd say maybe a couple. We get, every once in a while, we'll get a false alarm due to some popcorn that got made up in the teacher's office, or a medical in the nurse's office, something like that. But, I mean, there's not an overwhelming, we had one call when the furnace blew up in the library and the steam set off the smoke detector. So, that kind of stuff. But
you're not running to the school a lot.
we don't run to the school a lot, but we have many programs that we present to the schools. So we're in the schools all the time trying to educate the students on fire and life safety, the same with our seniors. And, you know, we can get into that too, but there's a long list of things that the fire department does besides just responding to the calls, or that we try to do. We're very active with the seniors and very active with the students when we can.
And I'm also not really that comfortable with the idea that somebody might have worked on a farm all day, and then, you know, at 8 o'clock at night, you're saying, oh, you know, come to the fire, and this guy is now maybe at 50% of where they should be because they worked all day.
That's me all the time.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with the fact that you're living with this level of stress year after year after year. That's not good for you.
I actually used to have dark hair, kind of like him, like nice dark hair, and a lot of it. No, I mean, I get it. I understand it. You try and manage it, but it's not something that's new. It's something that we've been discussing for years. So in 2005, I became the first full-time firefighter, and there was a process to get that in place. And then there's no slowing down of, we bit off more than we could chew even then. So the number of inspections that need to happen, the number of plan reviews that need to happen. I mean, we have so much development going on constantly. And, you know, we're trying to make sure that we're not only complying with all the state requirements for quarterly and annual inspections, which we're pretty good at, but we're still supposed to be doing plan reviews of all these other buildings and pre-planning for if there is a fire. And there's so many other things involved with it that I don't think everybody really has a full understanding of. I mean, we're nonstop. We're the home base for the regional emergency planning committee that we're mandated to be a part of as the town. So instead of doing it solely as a community, we're partnered up with 20 other Hampshire County communities, but we're the home base for it. So we bring in all the information from all the tier 2 reporters, so the hazardous material folks that meet thresholds on storing hazardous materials. All that information is based here in Hadley. And I mean, we do an awful lot of stuff. So it's not just the firefighting part. We're really trying to be prepared. Our training, it's extremely difficult. So not only is it difficult when you're asking them to come out at night, but to have them come for a 3-hour or 2-hour training every other week. You know, we're lucky if we get 4 or 5 people. They can't do it.
And they run out of gas.
They want to see their families too. I mean,
The woman that is clerical in the office, how many hours is she a week?
up to 15.
Is that all you need her for, is 15? So why is it at 15? To me, she seems like she's too qualified to be able to go out with you and then be able to do the clerical work.
Yeah, well, she switches off. So she puts on a firefighter hat and she goes to the call force rate. She's agreed to do that, so that's very nice of her too. But
within her 15 hours.
no. So she takes off her fire department or her office manager hat, puts her firefighter hat as a call force person, and gets paid under the call force rate. Then she comes back to work and signs back in as
Now,
office
that
manager.
call force rate seems kind of low to me.
Well, I mean,
Is
it's
it
pretty
average?
average. It's pretty average.
And what is it?
It's $15.25
An hour?
an hour for firefighter. Lieutenants get 17, captains 18, and deputy chiefs are 19. So, and that's pretty
So it's
average.
still not that much. Not for what they're doing.
We don't have a minimum, like, if they show up for, it's basically they show up for an hour, they get paid for an hour. Some communities will do a 2-hour minimum, but we do an hour. We haven't really approached that. A lot of the guys, they're not really worried about it. I mean, some of them do, but the majority are in it because they want to be a part of something for the community. And that's what makes it really, you know, how can I tell you, you know, I'm gonna discipline you for not coming to this drill because you just worked 60 hours, you know what I mean? It's,
Yeah, so that's a tough spot to be in.
yeah.
So I just want to say, like, I feel, well, for myself, safety is a huge thing for me. And I feel like we're all supportive of trying to figure out how to approach this. And so I'm thinking, can we do a gradual approach for 18 and then kind of supplement in 19? But I kind of feel like we can do a Band-Aid for 18, but 19, fiscal year 19 is going to be huge for us. So is there, you say you need 4, but are you willing to be able to work with the 2 and then gradually in the following year try to get the other 2 in? Can we do a gradual thing, or maybe hire 2 in the fall and then push one off or two off. You know, you don't wanna end up having to lay anybody off either,
Right.
you know,
No,
across the board.
I completely agree.
But
with that.
I just need to, it's bothering me because even when it was the police and they needed more officers, I was like right there gung ho because you need safety in this town.
Well-
Especially as it's growing, and I just don't, you know, and nothing against the school system, but you know, teachers, we have more students, we supply more teachers. So we should be able to do this. It's just
Well, and
doesn't
this
sound
is
right
even
to
more
me.
critical because if someone is overworked and tired, that's when they're going to make a mistake that could be dangerous to them or
Exactly.
someone else, you know?
Right,
Exactly.
and I really would hate to see us not give the firefighters what they need, the personnel they need, until some terrible thing has happened. You know, I really would love for us to find a way to give them 4 people.
So I think what it comes down to, I think we're all on board for doing as much as we can.
Mhm.
On a scale, I mean, arbitrary numbers, but a quarter, half, 3/4, what would that look like if we say we can come up with half of it for this year or a quarter of it this year? What does that translate to you? Like, who would you hire? How many would you need? Would one even be helpful in this kind of a?
So my recommendation, if it came down to that, if you had me make a choice, obviously, ultimately, 3 would be the minimum. But I understand what you're saying. If you can't do that, again, I am saying as the fire chief that I have a very, very big concern. I've been waiting, and every year, the police took their funding. This is the fire department's year, okay? I get it, there's not enough funding, so my recommendation, if I had to say it, it's 4. No, it would be 1. And the person that I would recommend doing would be the fire lieutenant mechanic. That would take an extreme stress off of myself and Nick. We have so much equipment that we cannot keep up on. And would I love to have a deputy chief in place? Absolutely, because we don't have the bench strength. But if we don't have equipment that's maintained and operating, we have an even bigger problem.
You don't
So-
have a full-time mechanic?
No, well, we have the DPW.
Okay.
So basically, I've been in discussions with Marlo, the DPW director. Brian, who's the mechanic right now, is having a hard time keeping up with all the stuff he has right now. So he's been discussing hiring a second. So we've been in discussions about it. I feel that if we hired a full-time fire prevention lieutenant and took all of our stuff out of that, so we would have a firefighter that would be responding to calls, but would be skilled in being able to maintain all of our equipment, and in discussions with the police chief, being able to maybe do an oil change on the cars for him during his daytime duties, if there's time. That would then lighten up the load, so you wouldn't be looking at having to hire a second mechanic over at the highway garage.
And so, well, this is, I don't know, I think this is like the first we heard of the second mechanic, but, so where would they do the repairs?
They would do them at the station. We're not talking about major, we're talking about light
No,
repairs.
no, I
Our
understand.
main line apparatus goes to a certified Seagraves Pierce dealer for its annual pump testing, PM service, US DOT. We have hundreds of small engine motors, we have our air packs, fire hose that needs to be tested. I mean, the list is endless that we
And
just
who-
can't keep up with.
And you guys just share all that duty now?
We tried to keep up with it, but, you know, I'm in the process of an ISO rating, an insurance rating right now, and we're supposed to have very clear records of annual hose testing and a lot of other stuff that we just physically cannot get to. It's impossible. So that would lighten up on that load. Nick could then focus, I could then focus on different tasks other than having to deal with, why isn't the tanker truck starting again today for the 17th time? Why isn't the brush truck starting? What's wrong with the engine? Is there all the water that we need on it? Is all the equipment still on it? We just got back from a fire. It can take 2 weeks to get the truck, you know, fully restocked with everything. You know, equipment breaks constantly. It gets used a lot, so.
Do you need to pay this person a little more because he or she has multiple skills?
I surveyed, I went online, I've asked different departments. We would be on the low side. Northampton just hired a new mechanic. Their mechanic is strictly just a mechanic. Doesn't responds to fires to take care of equipment, not an operating firefighter. and the starting pay, I believe, was 66,000. We're asking for 53 and change. But you're adding on that they're gonna be an EMT basic within 2 years of hire. They're gonna be firefighter 1, 2 certified, and they're also gonna be a mechanic. And we're asking for 53. And I've asked out there, and there's folks that have the qualifications that I would hire tomorrow, because I know their work ethic. And I felt that that was a fair evaluation of that position.
So of the 4 positions, might be tangential, but would any of these possibly pull from the call force? I mean, while they might be very deserving, very well qualified, I'll also kind of worry about cannibalizing our own. You know.
Absolutely. There's a couple folks on the call force that I think may be interested in it, and I know there's actually one town employee that may be interested in shifting over for a position rather than staying where they are right now. So it would be a transition, so you would be paying the same, the salary and benefits wouldn't be an additional one, it would be one that.
Well, but that
you'd
person
have
would
to hire-
probably,
You'd have to replace that person.
that person would have to be
Yes.
replaced in
Yeah.
wherever they came from.
But
David,
I'm just saying it would look good for me.
realistically, what sort of
Sorry.
juggling can we do?
Well, it sounds like we can go back and take a look at our revenues and see if we can't get another, it sounds like 53, is that the number?
Well, let's
He's looking for 4.
Yeah.
let's work with the 4 for right now. Let's
Okay.
not give him too much of a haircut just
Yeah.
yet.
All right, so the 4, okay, so
That's the
that's
$217,000.
$217,000. I don't see that kind of money in the revenues right now.
How much do you see in the revenues that you can realistically, not like, oh, if the stars all aligned, we would have it, but like realistically, that
I
would
could
have it.
probably put together another 100,000 from revenue, and then if we committed to spending more free cash than the select board has authorized, then that's an additional $80,000 that could be put on into the line.
I wouldn't mind seeing putting off OPEB even a little bit,
Mhm.
some of it. I mean,
Yeah.
because we've done just fine in the past, and we have put some of it off a little bit. And I just think this is so much more important. I mean, it is important to keep, just like our stabilization's important, OPEB's important, but this is just as important as the police or the schools or anything else.
And I totally understand that, but I'm thinking down the road, we're gonna make it happen for 18, but
But even if we do make it happen for 18, and so 19 is tough and we have to make cuts, I wouldn't necessarily cut the fire because they're already so small to begin with. You
Mhm.
might want to cut something else. I mean,
well, the goal is not to
to
cut
not to cut
anything.
not to cut anything, but I'm just saying, if we say just like the police, we just increased the police, right? So, and we increased them by quite a bit.
Yeah, but in turn, their overtime
Their overtime went down, but
went down.
sure, their overtime went down, but
Part of why we agreed to it.
right,
Exactly, because you were
but
spending it in overtime.
that's true. But I'm just saying, we if something happens, we're not going to go back and cut police. I mean, that's not the first thing we are thinking of. We don't want to cut.
Right, we don't wanna cut period, but I don't wanna sit here and say, okay, 19, let's not all
Well-
get nervous because we're
Sure.
gonna start cutting. And I'm sure he doesn't want us to do that either. I'm just trying to think of a gradual, a way we can get, and also utilizing the woman that's in your office now and somehow making her,
So you still have to pay her, though. I mean,
yeah, but, to me, it seems like she's dedicated and wanting to be there, so,
Well, I mean, she is dedicated, but she also has another full-time job, so.
okay, so I didn't know that.
So, yeah,
Poor
so,
thing.
yeah.
So at our last meeting, Finance Committee and Select Board was all discussing enhancing revenues, essentially. It's kind of the best and frankly only option really moving forward. One of the questions asked was basically how soon can we expect realistically enhanced revenues? I mean, are we talking 19? Is that something that if we buckle down and we're working on it?
Yeah,
we
so a lot of things happen in July, which doesn't really help us right now. So the revenues become much clearer after town meeting. We know what our state aid is going to be. We also know some of the other fixed costs are going to be. We also have a much better sense of our new growth figures. So using best estimates without knowing what the state aid is going to ultimately look like, and that could swing 100,000 one way or the other. So
But besides just waiting and seeing on state aid, what can we kind of proactively be doing over the next year, looking at 19 to enhance revenues?
Mhm.
I mean, I feel much more comfortable, funding the 4, finding a way to fund 4 if we have at least a game plan in place to
Right.
say, here's where we are going to work as a committee to make sure we have that money come 19.
So departmental revenues can be examined, okay? That's something that's on the agenda for the department head meeting for not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday. That I've brought this up with the department heads several times, and I haven't seen a whole lot of effort to increase revenues by looking at realistically what does it cost us to provide a service, whether that be a building permit or electrical permit or a life safety inspection, and how much are we actually charging, and what is that delta there? What are we losing on a daily basis by providing services that are not adequately funded through the permit fees? So I want to push the department heads there. We also have the new enforcement mechanism that has just been approved by the Attorney General, that if you do not have, if you have an outstanding charge of any kind with the town, we now have the ability to withhold a permit. Before, we had to wait a whole year before that we could exercise that kind of power and then go through a formal public hearing process. Now we can just do it. So I want to bring that up to the department heads on next Wednesday and say, okay, this kind of enforcement is something that we need to really look at, because we're just not bringing in the revenue like we need to in order to provide for public safety. And we all agree with the last thing we want is a dead body in the room before we actually do something.
So, I remember discussing the department heads, and with the, especially when Marlo came in, we had that discussion about looking at their fees and what they do and how to increase it. That we thought it was a great opportunity when we had the turn of events where the new heads are coming in and people are retiring, and I can see that it kind of got stuck somewhere in the obligation or whatever just didn't get fulfilled. But so I guess when it comes to that, I would like to see in each department, right now we have to figure this out, but down the road, I would like to see a list of things that each department charges a fee for and what they are and how many they are within a year, because maybe there are some fees that can be increased. And I definitely don't know all the fees that the town charges for what or if not. So, and then again, increasing his employees, which will be able to help, one, to get all the things done, but you might be able to bring in some more, because you charge fees for inspections and all those kinds of things. And so, I don't know, are they standardized?
Some of them are. Some of them are limited under Mass General Law. The
Right.
majority of them are $50,
Yeah.
so 25 for the permit. But all of our fees are online. You can see them.
Okay.
They're pretty average compared to the surrounding communities in the annual report. It breaks down all the inspections that we did, all the
Yeah.
plan reviews. Could we be doing more? Absolutely, but when you're going to 1,100 calls a year as well.
I'm
you know,
not
so-
saying
No, I'm
that
just-
just
I'm
because you
saying
get
it
4
would be an
employees, you better go out and pound the pavement.
Oh,
you
no,
know?
no. We would be doing that. That's the thing,
Yeah.
is the fire department brings in a substantial amount of revenue. We're shooting to try and bring in $30,000 this year with 2 of us.
Right,
So, and that's a $50 permit fee. Every once in a while, we'll get the big, so if we have a bigger business that's going in, like Planet Fitness, we charge a square footage fee for the inspection and plan review. So you get a little bit more revenue in.
I did
Yeah.
notice that. I thought that was kind of odd that you were for $30,000 and the police were $20,000. I just was thinking speeding tickets and all the tickets that you get, the police would be higher. Well, and there's 2 of you and you're higher. So that was surprising to me that you would bring in more.
Yeah, some of that money is spread out over other categories, so you.
Oh, it's not in there.
Yeah, so penalties and interest, court fines and fees.
Or somewhere
Yeah,
separate.
yeah.
But they're still
Oh, that would
already
make more sense then.
incorporated into the budget, so
Right.
he's not gonna triple or quadruple that number, which is what would have to happen in order,
Right.
if you were asking them to cover their own costs.
Right. So
Um,
we're talking about small change, basically. To continue with the answer, economic development is job one. We have to grow the economy within the town. So that means, whatever we need to do in order to make permitting more streamlined, more business friendly, more economic development strategies, such as trying to get on top of the gas moratorium. What are the short-term and long-term solutions for that? Other strategies of developing alternative energy. I love these solar fields. I don't know how other people feel, but every time the sun shines, we're making money.
Not
For me to
today.
get
Not today.
solar, I need my tiny house.
You need your tiny house?
Yeah, and town of Hadley won't approve that, so I can't get my solar panels.
You can rent the solar panel,
So let's,
Again,
I
You
Yeah.
don't
want-
get the tax
Already-
credits.
yeah,
How much is already, I guess, in the works, or is short term enough that we can reasonably count on for fiscal year 19?
You have 5 megawatts of solar fields that are in the works that could possibly inflate your new growth. So it's an additional $35,000 right there, just from those 2 projects. There's a restaurant which is going to come online pretty soon, unless we know something different.
And that's gonna bring in your
That'll bring in,
taxes and.
it'll bring in more economic activity and meals tax.
Great.
There's also the proposed hotel. I don't know where they're at with
Yeah,
that,
the
96-room
90.
hotel.
Yeah,
where's that gonna be?
behind Aldi's, Home Depot Plaza. There's a medical center going in where the Pizza Hut used to be. They just paid a $40,000 fee for just the sewer, just the other day, so.
Alright, but with all these things,
They're what ifs.
they're all what ifs.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna ask a question now that, like, no one's gonna like that answer of, but what would we have to do to go to the townspeople and say, we need a fire department, we need more taxes?
mhm.
I think if you're gonna go for an override, there's a lot of things in this town hall, computers, everything that need to be updated, that you need to dot all your i's, cross your t's, give them all the information that they're gonna need it by line item, not, and hit it all at once. You're not just gonna do it for the 4 firefighters.
I
And it's a
agree.
large joint
It's
conversation with the
a
select board.
large
there's IT
conversation.
department's up on that list, I'm sure there's other things the town needs,
Human
so.
Resources Director.
And I'm
Finance
for
director.
that, but as a lump,
Yeah,
you know what I mean, not just hit them here, hit them there type thing.
I agree.
Well, that's the way I feel about the North Hadley Fire Station. I wish that was thought through a little bit more carefully before that went through.
And so, David, I don't wanna get the rumor mill going, but if there's
It's too
talk
late,
of
we're
an
on TV.
override- I know, we keep saying override, if there's talk of it, would it be looking at 19, or would it be looking at 20? Or, I mean, I can't assume much more than 20, if it's IT, human resources, fire.
I'm working with the select board in order to have an override possibly as early as October. But it may be that you need to have more time.
October this year,
Yeah,
do you have any idea of what for IT, what it's gonna cost to update everything and?
I
we're
guess that
gonna ask
depends on
for
whether we got the
override?
grant or not.
Yeah, the grant would be a large part.
Yeah,
You
that's
might know
it.
better than I, but I would say a rough estimate for a good IT department, at least 200,000 operating.
Right, that's the number that we put in for the grant. It was 174, it was the grant
And
application.
then are we hiring somebody full-time to maintain all this stuff, or are we gonna,
We haven't proposed that yet.
well, if you're gonna upgrade it, you need somebody to know how to keep it going and so forth, right?
Right, so the last conversation the select board had was to say you rent that kind of service out rather than hire
And how
on
about
board.
shared with the school?
That's a possibility.
you know, you already have employees that are able to do this, why not share them,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But anyways, going back to this, so
I have another question regarding your staff. If you have call force coming in right now and you're paying them, now if you hire these people, you're not gonna have that call person coming in. So the amount of money that we are paying now for the people that are coming in for on call, have we thought about that, that's gonna be less than what we're.
So we're not getting a full, we're still gonna need call force people, so
But we might not use it as much.
we might not use it all for the car accidents and the,
Okay.
you know, but if there's a structure fire, it's game on for everybody.
For everybody.
Or bigger incidences, so there would still be a portion, but I think, I've seen a decline just by Nick and I handling the daytime, the smaller calls. So yeah, there may be some additional funding come out of the temporary wages. The training, the inspection and duty wages, that's training. I don't see that going down. If anything, that would stay the same.
Okay.
But there may be a decrease in that. I don't know how much. That would be something we would have to evaluate over the.
those trainings, do you do them in-house?
Some of them are in-house, some of them folks are sent to, we have one person that'll be going to the Call Volunteer Firefighter 1-2 program with the state.
Mm-hmm.
That's the $10,000 deal.
Mm-hmm.
So that starts in July, I believe. And that's Tuesday, Thursdays after they get out of work, they go to, and then Saturdays.
Mhm.
So that's a big commitment. It's 240 hours, I believe. And a lot of work. And it's not something that you want to miss. It's somebody who's really got to step up and make sure that they're going to commit to the department.
So David, tell me something about nuts and bolts here. If the committee was tonight recommend the current budget plus what the chief is asking for, then, then what happens?
Okay. So the last time I met with you, we talked about the two-step process for the budget, that we pass a, quote, balanced budget in May. And then we adjust that budget based upon the realities and certified free cash and new revenues that have come in October. And that's your final budget. That's the one that's used to set the tax rate. So you can commit to something now with the expectation that it has to be adjusted in the fall town meeting. What you don't want to do, I'm sure, is you don't want to be in a situation, Terry, as you described, where we give 3 but then have to take 2 back in the fall.
Well, we wouldn't take 2 back in the fall. The cuts wouldn't come from the fire department, as you were saying, they would come from somewhere else.
Okay, so watch how you say that, because you don't wanna cut, all these departments now within the town, the people are there obviously because we need them. I don't want the town departments freaking out come 19, and, it just is bad karma or feeling amongst the department heads and
Yes.
so forth. I'm gonna lose people because you needed this.
Yeah.
We all know that safety is important, so we just kinda gotta watch how we word things. We don't wanna be the bad guys.
Well,
So
I don't want
you-
to see anybody die in a fire.
You
I
asked-
get that, but I think there's ways that we can do this without saying cuts.
You asked a nuts and bolts question. One of the peculiarities is that the budget that you pass for the school in your annual town meeting, that is the baseline of your budget. You can't go back into the fall and cut that. So if we're talking about a 1.8% haircut across the board, once you vote that school budget, that school budget is no longer on the menu for a cut. So that larger cut, the cut becomes a larger percentage to everybody else. Valerie, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just, in the revenue part, I was just wondering, do you take into account the future revenues from the new houses that are being built?
Yeah, so that's in your new growth number. And the baseline new growth is 93,000. That's in a year where there's nothing that's going on. But in this year, just to start, and this is my crystal ball back in January, I put in 142,000 because of all the activity that's happening on Route 9. So everything that gets built in Route 9 prior to July 1st, that's gonna boost new growth above the baseline of 93,000.
So I guess what I was asking though was, all right, we say we recommend to approve this, and the chief goes out and hires his folks, and those people start getting paid, and then come fall, after all the revenue numbers come in, if there's a shortfall, then what happens?
Then we have to adjust the budget downward.
Well, yeah, but what does that mean in real life? What does, you know, what exactly, I mean, it seems like we have two choices, you either make cuts or you raise taxes.
I mean, that's the answer.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So you had made a or you had stated what would I feel about if we held off until fall
Yeah.
to get those numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and if the numbers come in right, that you might be committed to then making those choices.
Mm-hmm.
With, it'll give you more time also to look at next year.
Yeah.
That was another option, correct?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get that I don't want to be the chief that takes a teacher's position away or a police. It's not an option for me. Every department is running at the bare minimum. I agree with all, and I feel bad for you folks having to go forward with trying to present to the town that maybe that, that override may have to happen. I'm a taxpayer in town too. I agree with it. I understand it.
Wouldn't you like at
just
least
can't
1
commit.
week a year where you only work 40 hours?
Yeah.
I
No, my
also
wife would.
think that there's
Maybe
departments,
Christmas.
Yeah.
there's departments we can look at. So, for instance, the elementary school, they need another, is it 4th grade teacher? So they're able to come up with the funds to do that. And so it makes me think, can we shave some money off of what we give them? And will they still survive? They have the school choice money, but they're able to do what they need to do when they want to, because we are good enough to be able to give them what they need.
Mm-hmm.
And they make these changes, and so I'm thinking, can we give them less and they still maintain all their services? Do I think they could do it? I do, but nobody wants to be the one to cut the schools.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where, again, I say, you got all those kids in there, we need safety, regardless if you only go there twice for an alarm. But that one time that you need to go there, or the elementary school, you spend a lot of time there teaching. And so if me personally, and I'm not saying if I were to have to take away from a department, it would be that one, with the hopes of coming, giving it back if we had the option to. But they also have another source of funding, which they are taking $200,000 out of their school choice funding, right?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to accommodate. So that's one department I would look at, and to be honest with you, everybody's like, leave the schools alone. I think I just think that we all need to seriously look at each department. Like this, I'm looking at the senior center maintenance. You have $22,000 in there for maintenance fees, right?
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Well, we're supposed to be getting a new building. What do they need $22,000 for?
Well, we're gonna be spending at least $12,000 just to upgrade the wiring for Hadley Media, the Park and Rec, and the new air conditioning unit for the meeting room. So
Is that gonna be divided up between departments?
that's what we're working on right now, because I don't have $12,000 in the maintenance line item right now, so I'm looking around for how do we afford this.
Mm-hmm. So as I
So-
looked through each department, I think that we could shave some of the funding somewhere, especially with all these new people wanting these new
Well,
buildings.
that's one place that you can find savings is to cut the building maintenance, but I think that's one of the troubles that we've gotten ourselves into.
Which is why North Hadley Hall is falling into
Well,
bits over the years.
I'm just talking about a building that we're getting a new building for.
Right, but that's not gonna happen for a while. I don't see that happening.
That's like a 2-year out before you actually see a working building.
January 19, is the earliest that I would expect that that building would be decommissioned.
So the new one would be usable, yeah?
Well, the old one would be decommissioned in January 2019 at the very earliest.
And then what happens to it?
It gets demolished, that's part of the.
And that costs money.
Right, that's something you're gonna vote on in the fall.
Can you pull from enterprise funds
I can,
for safety?
up to a point.
Is it legal? I'm sure it's legal, but. Well, I mean, you know, you never. Just saying.
Yeah, I would have to look, there are Department of Revenue guidelines on what I can charge for administrative charges, and so I'd have to double check that.
Mhm.
So with estimates, looking at how much we can increase our estimates of revenues,
Mm-hmm.
how much we can commit to free cash, and you mentioned that come July, you'll have a much better idea of, solid numbers actually from state aid and stuff like that.
Right.
How much could we responsibly estimate more in revenues and kind of commit from free cash, and then in the situation that state aid comes back worse,
Mhm.
we're not so worse off that we have to make huge cuts or something drastic, and ideally it comes back better and we can maybe fund even more to fire or not have to pull from free cash.
Right. Well, I'm certainly comfortable with a figure of $50,000. I could go higher than that. The free cash, again, we're gonna have to talk to the select board, because they did adopt a policy.
Yeah, we're trying to get rid of the free cash. You can't rely on it. You shouldn't
Right.
rely on it for
I
your
agree,
budget.
Yeah. So they're concerned that it may not be there for one reason or another, and, it's always a danger.
Exactly.
Uh,
I mean, I feel comfortable saying we are gonna find a way to be able to do the 4 for you, and then, with hopes that each department, we look at revenues for every department and fees that we could be charging, that we're not charging, or we can adjust,
Sorry, 4 for 18 or 19?
for 18.
18.
And, I think keep putting it off and off is not the answer to it. I'm
Just
not
do it and then
for
fix
cuts.
it.
Do it and give us a solid year, and that's a commitment from us, the select board, the town's management people, to really get a handle, not just 19, you gotta look,
Right, it's gotta be a constant level of funding so that keeps going forever, not
you
just
gotta
19.
look at like a 3-year plan, and in the midst of that, we have to, if you can get town hall to run efficiently more with IT and other things, and get us all up to the 2016 world here, I think that there would be a cost and savings just that way as well, because you're running more efficiently. Or it could be where these people aren't working 20 hours a week for nothing, and they're actually able to do their job in 40 hours a week. So I personally, I think you bite the bullet for 18 and make the commitment. I think we can find it somewhere, whether it's extra money we're gonna find in the fall, or having to take away from somewhere temporarily and saying we'll put it back.
Similar to what we did last year, taking the
Yeah.
75 from the school.
Schools and
We pushed
giving them
off,
back.
didn't we push off the OPEB, we did some things, and then at
Exactly.
the end, turned around.
So
But
I,
that's not
So-
what they wanna do again this year, I don't think.
no, that's not what they wanna do this year, but ultimately, this department, I always said that, and Mark as well, safety is first.
Mhm.
I love our school system, and all the other departments, but if we're not here in existence, what does it matter if those other departments are there? You know what I'm saying? And, Route 9 is growing with the businesses, and, you're not gonna gain it, you're gonna gain some money there with new business, but we can't count on it, it's an if thing. But,
So, can I make a recommendation?
sure.
That if we're gonna go ahead and vote on this tonight, which we almost have to vote tonight because town meeting's coming up.
Yeah.
Well, you have to lay out also where we're taking the funds from.
Well, we don't know that yet, that's the problem. So what I was gonna suggest was that if we were gonna vote in that way tonight, then after town meeting, this group meets regularly, if it has to be every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever it has to be, and we go through the budget line by line by line and see where we're gonna trim and where we're gonna get this money from.
Not only that, as well as David's gonna meet with all the head department heads, and they have to do their thing too for us to be able to do ours, so we can't put it off and come January start talking about it. So I agree with that, and I have no problem meeting as far as that, but we have to be able, maybe meet with the individual departments, go over their budgets line by line. I'm for, sharing positions. I feel that there's towns within this department, departments within this town that can share coordinators, they can share secretaries.
Yeah, can we do any more sharing with the police?
Well, that's what we've done. So by establishing that mechanic position, we're
Yeah.
trying to free up time so all the vehicles don't have to go out to Ford or wherever. So we're trying to take a load off. We're sharing there. The police chief and I are sharing on contracts to try and get increased pricing. That's why you see the increase in our radio maintenance. We've taken on that. We've gotten a better deal on that. We've really, this budget there's no fluff. There's zero fluff. The only thing I'd like to offer up, and it was another plan that David and I had talked about, he asked me what would be the bottom line number. So we do have Nick McKenna, a fire lieutenant. So if you're looking to trim costs and to figure this out, we could do 3 firefighters. Ultimately 4 is great, but Nick could become part of that rotation.
Okay.
So I would request that it be the deputy chief. So the deputy chief would be a salaried position. It's no overtime, same schedule that I would have, but different days probably. 1 firefighter and then the fire mechanic. So that is another option. So Nick would become part of that 2 on and 2 off schedule. And he's completely fine with doing
And
it.
he's a call force person.
No, he's the full-time
full-time.
lieutenant right now.
I think he
Okay.
came on, 2 years ago?
Yeah, he took my position as
Right.
the fire, he's a fire lieutenant, but he took my position in fire prevention. So that is another option, and
That's
I would say.
doable, and then look at where we are next year, and
See if you can get that 4th guy
and
next
see if
year.
we can get that 4th guy, but you would feel more comfortable with you would be better off with the 3.
That would be, the
Then
3 would be the
nothing.
only way that we could work that 2 on and 2 off schedule that would provide coverage 7 days a week between the hours of 6 AM and 6 PM. And you can see that the overtime is limited to 25 hours for all of them. And so basically what we would do is if we have to fill a position because somebody's out sick, we can offer it up to call force people, paying it out of our temporary wages line. Or we could go back to, we don't have minimum, there's no union here, so if we have to go back to 3, we can, but again, I become that operational chief again. So we're not looking at bringing an overtime bill to the town for this. We would be backfilling with call force people and with me.
What's the number for, the number for 4 is 217. What's the number for 3?
The number for 4 is actually 206. So
But
some of the
the-
stuff
the-
was,
The supplemental and ancillary other costs.
so the
Okay.
uniform allowance and things like that.
The uniform allowance, are you paying, can I ask what company it is?
Normally we go to Sentry, but
Okay,
it's a
now,
$500
are-
allowance to them for just basic, for being able to get duty pants, and it's the same thing as the
okay,
police.
it's not like the cleaning service
No,
every,
no,
okay,
no.
that's what I was thinking.
So the firefighters are at 43,222 for each, so that's times 2, it's $20.70 per hour. Lieutenant, so you'd have 43,222, the 53,098, which is the lieutenant vehicle maintenance.
You gotta slow down so David can write an ad.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about, actually.
Well, the cost for the 3 versus the 4.
Okay.
So it'd be one of these. I can add it up for you.
So 1 full-time firefighter,
Correct.
EMT basic,
Mm-hmm.
so that's 43,222. Okay. One lieutenant.
This is an updated one.
Oh, I see, sure, okay.
Valerie?
Where's the finance committee? I just wanna look at it.
So that's 53.
We need a budget for.
You do have a budget.
We do, so there's 50,000.
That's here, and
And then this one here, 66, 66.
Oh, the reserve fund?
yeah,
Came up with
What do we do with our
162,906.
Emergencies that come
How
up.
much was it, Mike, the total?
162,906.
Okay.
So we-
Throughout the year, you know, if somebody needs a new copier and there's no money there, we can transfer the fund from our 50,000.
Oh, I see. So maybe this is an emergency.
Well, I was looking at this. If he's not already
What's that?
including that back into the
So,
budget.
looks like the basic cost would be 162,906 as opposed to 206,128
Plus the,
plus. Would these numbers still remain the same? The overtime and
The overtime would be the
that's
2507, so I'll add that, 2507 plus uniform costs is, I got times 3, that'd be
physicals?
15.
Physicals?
Mhm.
well, for argument's sake, why don't you just use those numbers?
All right.
Okay, here it is. So the reserve fund that we have for $50,000, is that already included in monies that you're gonna get back? We haven't spent any of that,
You've spent,
or have we?
you've spent some and you've got another 17,000 in requests coming your way.
What's this money for?
This money is money that you sit on, it's $50,000, it used to be $90,000, the prior finance committees trimmed it down to 50. This is basically our emergency money during the course of the year, if there's something that goes boom. So snow and ice, cost us
Which we know
10,000.
is 10,000 coming to us.
10,000. And the planning board has got a scanner that they're looking for $7,600. There was a legal fee for tax title with the treasurer that's already been funded, and I think that was for $3,000, something like that. I may be
Yeah,
completely
it
off on
was, I
that.
remember that.
Okay.
And of that, how much money, I remember asking her, how much money was she able to get back from,
Yeah, I don't have that information. I'm not gonna guess.
okay.
So, but this is money that you control that helps us out when we get ourselves into a jam because of too much snow or there was a rate increase that we hadn't anticipated.
So it's a
or
little slush
Or
fund.
water
Yeah,
main
yeah.
breaks or something like that.
water main break that doesn't cost, that.
So we-
Water main breaks don't come out of
Emergency fund.
the
It
water
can,
department?
it can, but it depends on what what you have to do in order to address the water main break.
So how do you feel,
So we should save some of that.
so
for the-
people rely on this? Oh, we can go to the reserve fund type thing, and I understand the snow and ice, but as far as the scanner, I think you can put that off to,
I think you can put the scanner off too.
I would think personally you could put it off to July 1, and then you're into the new budget year, right? How do you
Well,
feel about that?
The select board are very supportive of the scanner.
Well, I'm very supportive of hiring 3 people.
Yeah.
Can we take our stuff and go scan it somewhere?
Well, so they have,
Temporarily?
I don't know if you were here when they were talking about that, but, so the problem is they have an entire file cabinets upon file cabinets of this stuff, and they want to get it all digitized so that they can find it again.
Absolutely, and I get that, and do we have who's doing it?
Well, that wasn't even, who was gonna feed the machine wasn't really
Do we have a
addressed.
student that needs to put in some volunteer time?
I broke down the
And does the
stuff
school
that
have
would
a
be
scanner
added.
temporarily?
Well, this
Then
is,
we can wait till
no,
July
but this is
1?
something that'll handle a
170,
blueprint.
613.
Has to be a big
Yeah, I
thing.
know what they are.
So can I
Yeah.
ask again about this 50,000? What's the difference between this and, using free cash, stabilization, reserve fund, something like that? Why is this specifically set aside for finance committee for?
This is so that we don't have to go back to town meeting in order to address a shortfall in the budget.
Mhm.
Uh,
And
It's a slush fund.
it's a,
It also prevents a deficit from one year to be placed on the tax rate for the following years, so it's a way of protecting the taxpayers as well.
So so have we ever consistently spent the 50? I don't think so.
No, I think that, that money, usually half of it comes back in the form of free cash at the end of the year.
Right, and so in your figures for free cash or what we might get for revenue, you have not included in any of this, correct? Or have you?
For free cash, I put in a conservative $500,000. That's what we usually get back.
Of that,
That'd be about, your 25 would be figured into the 500,000.
so in my opinion, I feel comfortable cutting this to 25,000. We haven't consistently used more than that each year. If we're looking for funding purposes.
Okay.
And then in the fall, give it back if we have it. You know what I'm saying, like we put it off, changing.
So you
It's
would,
kinda like the school, we took away 75,000 in the fall, when we got our free cash numbers, we gave it back.
I wanna check, but I suppose that could work. I mean, I don't like the number being as low as 50,000.
Oh, okay, so
Okay.
that's the next
Let me-
question, how
let
do you
me-
feel about that?
You've got a $16 million budget that you're running, and your cushion is $50,000. When you think about that in terms of percentages,
Right. it's-
That's nothing.
yeah, you're running it, you're sailing very close to the wind at that point.
So what other towns have comparably?
Good question, I don't know.
Towns our size.
Sure.
So, okay, so I guess we have to decide or figure out, and then the select board have to agree with us, right?
Right.
And what's your sense of how they feel about what they want to do to be able to help the fire department?
Certainly, they've been supportive of the fire department. They want to make sure that we have a responsible public safety profile in this town. This is the year for the fire department to get a boost, and this may not be the only year. We may have to do this over a period of time, but our public safety, we've worked with the police, now it's the fire department's turn for this. I think they want to support the fire department as much as possible. They recognize that we don't have enough to cover the complexity that is Hadley.
Right.
So
So
how
I just wanted to kind of get the sense of feeling if we're working really hard right now to get this funding.
Right. So how much can we as a finance committee commit to right now without select board's hopefully future assistance on this? I mean, so we're looking at revenues, and we're looking at, are we at the cap for free cash right now in terms of what's committed?
I suppose with a policy, you could throw another 5,000 of free cash in there.
And so then my next question is, the reserves, what do we have in reserves for water and sewer and all that? I mean, you said you would have to check into it, see if we could pull money from those?
We would need a town meeting vote to do that,
Okay, so,
yeah. And the balances I don't have at this point for you.
not that we want to do that, I just want to
Yeah.
know options.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, if we had to, we could, you know?
we have to vote tonight on whether we're approving the budget as is.
Well, you have another bite at the apple. You all committed to having a meeting on the 3rd. So,
The third is,
next Wednesday.
Third's kind of close.
Oh, but we've
Yeah.
done it the
Plenty
day
of
of the
time.
meeting. We've done it the day of the meeting in his office. So, I mean, it's close, but
I don't
well, that's
like
the
it.
day
Don't
before
like it.
town
we don't
meeting.
want to
Yes,
do
it
it, but.
Well, but I mean, we beat this horse pretty dead already. I think it's time to.
So let's look at the numbers. So he's mentioned we can maybe stretch 5,000 for free cash.
Plenty of time.
Let's look at the motor vehicles.
So how much, what's
So
the figure we
revenues, you
gotta
said
come up
50,000.
with?
So
To be responsible,
170,000.
we can project more revenues. get
In here,
50,000
another
out of that.
50.
And what's the difference? He originally wanted two
He
hundred
can-
and,
217.
3 people instead of 4. right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at 55. And then, how about you mentioned, can we do the 6,500 for the clerk that wanted because she wants that piece of equipment, and you said we could pull it out of capital.
Right, we could fund that through capital.
So we can add another 6,500.
You say the clerk? Oh, God.
So actually, that occurred when you were talking maintenance. How much?
Gonna
when is
put
it
one
proper
half
to
your
put
family out of
something in
business?
Maintenance versus capital.
I'm sorry?
When is it proper to put something in maintenance versus capital? When
Uh,
we're
Jess
talking
won't
looking
be
at that
watching.
20,000 and
So the threshold is $25,000 for maintenance versus capital, so
so the maintenance, okay, so just give us an example what the maintenance is at the senior center.
Okay.
What's that for?
mhm. That's for the senior center.
Vacuuming, doing
No,
what?
no, that's not building operations, that's a separate budget.
Okay, so
Alright.
what's the maintenance for?
The maintenance would be for special projects having to do with wiring, heating, ventilation, painting, repair of the ugly wall that has a big hole in it, any kind of repair to a system that goes down, any kind of,
The electrical work is the TV, are you breaking that down over the departments, the 3 departments that are gonna benefit from it?
we haven't gotten that far into that project, we just got those prices. And so,
Mhm.
Is
I
there
mean, we're
any
gonna
way
have,
that
I
we-
mean, the short answer is we're gonna have to, because we don't have the funds
Right.
available, and I'm not even sure I've got the 88
Mhm.
uncommitted to other projects in that
But
building.
being one-time projects, does it make sense to roll that into capital versus operating? And you said 25 is a threshold, but presumably it could be lower than that and still roll it into
Mhm.
capital.
Yes, you can, and we've done that before.
Does that give us an option then? I mean,
Yeah.
in freeing up some cash? Because, I mean, when you're talking about electrical wiring and fixing holes, that might sound like one-time off projects that don't need to be in the recurring.
They need
Yeah.
to fix the electrical so they have air conditioning over there, correct?
Well, they also,
Not really
they also have
healthy environment.
they also need additional energy in the Park and Rec department and in Hadley Media. So we
Right.
have an old system that can't handle the load.
Is Hadley Media gonna draw a lot of that? You know what I mean, for whatever they're using it for?
What do you say there, John?
I think it's mostly for air conditioning.
For their
We need more
equipment,
power?
right?
Yeah, you need power, right?
I'm not sure I'm familiar with the electrical scene over
Okay.
there.
All right.
It's more the connectivity with our broadband that is the
Mm-hmm.
snafu at this point over there.
Okay.
So I couldn't really speak to that
Okay.
intelligently.
Fair enough, fair enough. So the deferring it to capital means we're deferring it to the fall town meeting. That's basically what we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't think
But
we
does that
can-
essentially free up funds right now for us to commit?
You can, yes, it
You
does.
can, but this is basically, I don't know if you've been in that building, but when it's hot, and it's just not logical to
Yeah.
us to expect our employees to work in that kind of environment.
Yeah,
It's
by
just,
fall, summer's coming on.
exactly, so
Yeah, I see.
I'm not in favor of that. We need to get that updated for them to make it a good working environment for the summer.
And I think Hadley Media, one of the things that's driving this electrical project is to get this meeting room over there oriented in a different way, so it's a better meeting space, more productive, but there's no air conditioning in that part of the building, so
And this is why I'm wondering, can we,
But I would
Follow
hate
the money
to,
from
yeah,
them.
do we want to move everything or want to invest with really much of anything if we're unsure if that's going to stick
Well,
around?
it's something that the select board is gonna definitely talk about, but the idea that if you have short money, that's going to increase productivity in a building that you're gonna hang on to for another 3 years, is it worth spending?
Yeah,
if
well,
it's-
I just, my priority, I would think the priorities would, I know it's not a lot, but my priority would be different, maybe not, that would be
Mhm.
more of the safety.
Okay.
I-
How about if we try something like this? Okay, so we know now that the number is not 217, it's 170. All right, so is it possible for us to get to 170? I mean, does that work for you, Chief? I mean, am I talking heresy here?
No.
Okay.
We're just, you know, we're also trying to find additional revenue, so that's why we're part of an
Right.
ambulance study right now,
Yep.
so.
I would say we might not be able to get it done today, we still have time, but I would like to commit to the 170 and we just need to figure it out before town meeting.
So, so if you said we can do 50, probably in revenues, we got 5 in free cash, 6,500 from the machine that we can move over to the, capital, maybe take 50 from OPEB, we have to come up with another 58, and we'd be there.
Mhm.
And that just may appear in revenue.
No, we already did
No.
50
Oh, yeah,
in
you-
revenue, now we gotta take 58 out of somewhere else. I mean,
What's the temporary wages under, with the town clerk's salary?
Oh,
Why are they temporary? Isn't that like,
going after the clerk, I can look at his eyes.
That's Pat.
no, I'm looking at everybody's department. I'm questioning
Just
everyone.
watch Mike's eyes.
It's gonna be one hell of a night for you if we take it all away from the clerk's office.
No, because I know they do shared services too, so I just, why is the word temporary there?
Could it make sense to commit ourselves here and now to half that or something like 100,000? And then come July, you know, if the numbers come back from state aid better, great, we can do the full 4 or how it works out.
I feel
But if it comes out
comfortable.
worse, I feel very out about trying to say we're gonna find 200,000 come town meeting or you know, later down the line. And then come July, we're even more in the hole. Because, as you said, it could swing 100,000 plus or
Mm-hmm.
minus.
mhm.
Well, but if that happens, then we're gonna have to go for an override and just, it is what it is.
Mhm.
I feel like we need to commit to the 3, the $170-something thousand, find the numbers, work very hard,
for
starting
that.
July 1, to come up with a plan, not just for 19, 20, 21, and expect that we're gonna get hit hard, and we have to figure out what we're gonna be doing. And that's going back to these individual departments, seeing what can be changed in each department. If nothing, fine, but I think we need a better understanding.
I agree with that.
Totally. There's no sense of committing for 100,000 and putting it off till January. You know what I'm
Cause
saying?
you got the same problem,
You got the same problem then.
and it's gonna be here in a flash.
That's right. So,
I'm just trying to be conservative. I don't want to put us in a position where it comes out 100,000 negative on the state aid, and then we're finding ourselves unable to find
it's a
it.
game, this is the thing we have been doing, that's been the practice.
Yeah, but,
It's not good
Gabriel
practice.
has a point there. I mean, it's very ugly today when you get that state aid. Because you go into that conference committee, you don't know what you're gonna get at the other end of it.
Mhm.
And it comes out, it's after town meeting and the numbers swing in a very bad way. And now you're in a situation where you're cutting capital, you're cutting your OPEB, you're using your reserves in a way that was never intended and puts you farther behind for the next year. So,
Well, you already suggested cutting OPEB.
Right, that's what I was gonna say.
I
We're
did.
already kind of cutting those things like OPEB and
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you've
yeah.
already
looking at
suggested
reserves.
that,
yes, I
so,
know.
So that's my point, is that if then we come back and state aid says another 100,000, we're already exhausting those resources that we would look to cut first, and where that can come back that way.
so the decision is, what do you suggest then?
So then funding something less, like half, I don't know if,
He just said it's not worth it basically unless he has like 3,
Or the 1, so.
right? So why, you know,
I just don't think it's gonna be efficient, so
It
we're gonna
won't
be
be
looking at
efficient.
somebody who's gonna be, you couldn't do a group scenario, you know what I mean? So it would be, we'd have another employee, not to say that that wouldn't be helpful, but it's not gonna be an efficient employee. They're gonna be there with, I mean, I don't know, you can look at it different ways, but I would prefer to wait then.
if you're not
So-
gonna do 3. So my personal opinion is that let's figure it out to get the 3. Put put off the one until we see what happens.
But the idea being that, and let's say, to go back to my old idea, we start on January 1st with 4 people, cut this in half. So we only have to try and find half for now. If state aid comes back positive, if we can do our work and find more in the meantime, if we can do all that and get the money, we can presumably add that perhaps in time to start July 1st or
Well, what's,
shortly
I
after.
mean, how critical,
But if we can find the money, then we can find the money. But if we can't find the money, it does come back that, there's something that, as much as we're committed to fire, there's a higher need or higher priority, and we can't find it. Why is there the need to commit ourselves to that now?
There's no, in my opinion, more priority than the safety in this town. That's the top priority, in my opinion. So, regardless if we wait and give them 100,000 or whatever to January, you're still putting it off, and it's been put off long enough. And for
I'm tempted to agree, but we also have to work with select board. We also have to present this to town meeting. And I'm just uncomfortable about going in front of all of them and saying we're putting ourselves in a hole and we're working out of it, or.
We're already, right, I
But-
get that, but you see, the hole actually has been there. We're not creating the hole, it's been existing. And this is where the select board and a committed finance committee has to finally buckle down and say, we're gonna work hard to get this town operating the way it should be. In my opinion, to be honest with you, this board, we're all part-time people on these boards. We need to change the way we do government. And hiring the people, a finance person, administrator, whatever. I mean, we need to seriously look at the town dynamics and make changes. And it needs to get done instead of keep putting it off.
I agree, and I don't think that the work we're going to be doing would change in any way. I'm just hesitant in terms of perception to say that. We're saying here right now, on live TV, we're gonna do that. And we're gonna have to count on select board, if we're talking about free cash and maybe raising that cap or.
well,
working
so,
with
but
that,
the
we're
buck
gonna-
doesn't stop here, right? So we're making a
We're
recommendation.
making a recommendation to the
Select board could say no still.
That's right. They make recommendations all the time and they don't, okay, like everybody, for the last 5 years, there's supposed to be every so many years, new computers. Well, they did it 1 year, right? 1, 2? So, I mean, things change, I get that, but, we
I
have to
think
make sure it
it's
does
like
work.
setting a deadline, right? We're saying we're gonna do this, and we're gonna go to work and figure it out. That's what we're saying. Because
Exactly.
if we put it off, then nothing's gonna happen until it becomes an emergency again.
Mhm.
So if we wanna get this done, David, how are we gonna do it?
Now it's David's problem, right?
He's good at coming up with the
Yeah, it's
numbers.
not
He,
fair. Where's one you're saying that's wrong here right now?
Yeah, we
I
need
don't
a
know,
good
he always did
coal-fired
it before.
steamship quote, right?
Statements.
Survey timbers and all
So
that.
just to add the point of order for your temp wages for the clerk, because somebody's watching. That's
she
for-
text you?
No, not her, but it's for the poll workers and.
I thought
so-
that's what it was, but they're not temporary.
Yeah,
They're
so-
existing every year.
Yeah,
So
it's-
why use the word temporary?
It's
So I'm like,
basically
what is temporary?
part-time temporary, just like my temporary line item is for
Yeah.
call force firefighters.
I'm
Yeah,
not
maybe,
saying cut
maybe,
that.
maybe,
I didn't
maybe
say
we
that.
call
I
it
just wanted
something
definition
else.
of the word
That's
temporary.
right.
house.
And the school thing, I'm just.
Call the police chief and tell them to get around our houses right now.
I just think that there's room in these budgets, and if you get the town running up to par like it should be with IT and other things, it's gonna generate funds itself within that, you know what I mean? And so it needs.
Takes time.
Yes, it does, it takes time, but, I would hope that the building that I'm sitting in right now, if it starts on fire, I got more than just him fighting the fire.
You got me.
To be out there with a garden hose waiting for the chief to come.
I agree. I want to support as much as possible. I was just trying to make sure we don't basically dig ourselves into a hole we can't climb out of, is all.
Well, so we're digging ourselves into a hole that we know we have to fix,
The hole needs to be fixed, it's been there for a
right?
few
It's
years.
just putting it off is still gonna have him working 60 hours, 65 hours a week. It's still gonna have he'll have all the same problems tomorrow morning that he had yesterday morning. So I think we need to fix it.
Would it be helpful if I did this? Okay, so we have a number, 170,000. I know I can't just raise it out of the revenues alone. We'd have to spend free cash in a way that we need to discuss with the select board, but how close can I get to the 170? What can I do realistically going into the budget, and take a look at revenues, because those revenue figures date from December. What can I do in order to, based upon 6 months of knowledge, 4 months of knowledge, what can I do to realistically address the revenue stream? And see if we can't get close there. And then the next time we meet with the select board, we say, okay, this is the size of the problem that we're dealing with.
And when would we be doing that?
At your
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
the 3rd.
Have a joint meeting, finance and
Yeah.
select board here?
Yeah, you all said that you wanted to meet
Yeah,
this Wednesday.
we have it
so-
here. But I thought that was to, go over the
You mean
strategies for
tomorrow?
Two Wednesdays.
Okay, right.
the 3rd.
Tomorrow's
The 3rd.
Yeah, and I can't come tomorrow no matter what. But the 3rd is the day before town meeting,
Mm-hmm,
and I thought we were using the 3rd to go over what we're doing at town meeting,
Yeah.
how we're doing it.
mm-hmm.
So now you wanna add, that's gonna be a long night.
Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
Can you have that stuff prepared by either Friday of this week or Monday, either the
Sure.
28th or the 1st?
Yeah, that won't be the.
I don't like doing it the night before town meeting.
I understand.
Can
You-
folks here meet on the 1st?
I think we were trying to meet the select board too, as part of the.
Well, we gotta start somewhere.
When's the 1st?
That's Monday.
That's Monday.
I gotta think my calendar can work
It's
here.
a sacred holiday for me.
It's
but
down
I'll be
there.
here.
What's the holiday?
May
I think
1st.
I can. I may need to juggle things, but I think I can.
It's May Day?
make
Yeah.
the
For you?
Yeah.
We're cutting your Mayday pole, sir.
I love it.
It's down there. Look, let me show you how this works here. That's May 1st.
Right.
What time do we want to meet on Monday, the 1st?
Well, she's still working it out here. Hang
I
on.
go to old fashioned.
The 3rd is the
calendar.
meeting with the select board, and the 4th is town meeting. So it's the 1st or the 28th. I don't know
Friday.
if anybody ever wanted to meet on a Friday. That sounds horrendous, but
Yeah, I was gonna say, what are you talking?
No.
Monday the 1st. That's what you're better on Monday the 1st.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good with that. If everyone else is good with that.
What time?
7 o'clock, and we have to have the agreement that we're gonna have a decision made on that day.
Okay.
We're coming in, we're deciding, no leaving without voting.
Well,
we-
again, don't
do
we have
we-
to work with select board
do we
when it
s-
comes to like free cash?
do we try
Well,
to
he's gonna do that between now and then and see what he can come up with.
I thought he was gonna come up with the adjustment to revenues to see what we have to work with.
Well,
on the
he's
finance
gonna
committee.
massage the whole book and see what he can come up with.
But book aside, if you're talking about raising the cap on the free cash, so that we have that to work with, it's a select board task, right? Hence why we're meeting with them about
Well, but
this
like I
on
said, we're
Thursday.
making a
We're
recommendation,
coming up with our recommendation
I see.
for them for Wednesday.
and then they have a couple of days to chew on it for Wednesday, and then we'll all be
Gotcha.
here on Wednesday. And then Thursday will be at town meeting.
Gotcha.
So the meeting on Wednesday the 3rd, what time's that at?
7.
Okay, because I have a meeting at my work till 6. And then the 1st, okay. Yeah,
Does
I
that
can-
work for everybody?
Yeah, I will make it work.
Yeah, make it
Yeah.
work.
It works for you?
Yeah, so Monday,
Okay.
the
All right,
3rd,
so I'm putting it
the
in.
4th.
Add.
The week after, you guys
Why not?
can take off.
Why not?
FC,
Hadley week.
7 p.m.
Well, this was Hadley month.
Done.
I can just say for
Door.
myself that I'm committed to getting this money for you for the 3, and then working very hard for the town to figure out
The 4th.
a solid budget for the fiscal year 19, for no departments to suffer. I'm not talking cuts or whatever, but I think that it has to be all around in the town, including David, a commitment to really trying to get a good handle on this budget process, because you just can't keep
I mean-
going like this every year.
And
the funding
some of us
and-
are really new, so this is like a new thing for us. So we're trying to get our hands around that. I think we'll be more efficient
I think that's great.
next year.
I appreciate it. I mean, I know that you're committed to trying to figure out the road that we have to take here.
That's
And
right.
I agree with you 100% on, if you're gonna go to the town and say we need to increase your taxes, you have to have a big package together.
Just make sure you go home and tell the clerk's office that we're cutting her 75%.
I'm not going home.
Oh, there you go.
Sleeping at the station
You're
tonight.
putting yourself up for adoption.
Yeah, but
Well,
thank you.
We have to have a fireman's ball or something to raise some money.
The association is very committed. We bring in a lot of money that we put back into the community. This year, the department's committed to buying one of the air packs that we need for the new truck at the tune of $7,000. So that's the commitment of your call force people so we're committed, they're committed, they understand, it takes time, but I thank you very much.
Okay, so,
You good with me?
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
chief.
So you're gonna have massage numbers for us on
I'm
Monday?
gonna work the numbers and I'll have a report for you. In advance of the first. I'll take the liberty of posting for the first. And posting for the third. On the third, there'll be requests for reserve fund transfers that will be on your agenda. All right.
And what is that about? Wait, slow down.
That's the 10,000 for snow and ice and the,
There was one sent from Marlowe, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
right.
And the other one, what was the other one?
That's from the planning board for 7,600.
And what's that for? Is
That's
that
for the scanner.
Well, right.
I'm kinda leaning off that scanner big time.
I'm always astounded at the difference between running a business, and running a town. It's like, if I needed a scanner, I'd probably spend less than $100. But but this is a big project that needs to go through, so this must be a fancy scanner.
Well, it's a big one.
Big.
It's
like
big to handle
blueprints.
blueprints.
It's huge.
That's the
Is that for a
thing.
new one?
I see.
Yeah.
Can they
There's no
rent
used
one
ones
to
out
get the
there?
project done?
Good question. They probably can. There's an outfit called King Enterprises that does that kind of stuff.
And it would, if they could rent one to get the project done for half of what it costs to buy one, would that be worth
Yeah,
it?
I was actually going to ask for that for the Capitol to help with our compliance with the public records law.
I mean, because right now the issue there is that everything's on paper in filing cabinets
Yeah,
and they can't find anything.
right.
And compared to not having a functional fire department, do we care? I know
I
that,
think
Yeah.
everything is important.
Well, I think it goes back when we're talking about having IT and making the town more efficient and like doing all this.
Yeah.
That's where we'll find the money. But if we're cutting that to have the money now, then we're never going to be more efficient and have more revenue.
No,
right?
we're cutting that until July 1. And
and then if we
who's to say we can't take it out for $50,000 on
Well,
July 1?
but before we sentence them to death, I mean, let's
Well, I'm
have,
not saying that, I'm
Yeah,
just saying
let's hear-
temporarily for
let's hear their
60 days.
because right now what we're doing is we're like, oh, we can take a little piece of this crust from this pie over here and put it on that side.
Mhm.
We need a bigger pie.
Well, unfortunately, that's the way it's been done, and that's what we need to try to get away from. That's
That's why
that's
I'm
not
really
proper
leaning
management.
towards committing to the fire department, and then if we have to have an override, we have an override. I mean, it's like,
I have something to add.
oh, go
I have
ahead.
something to add.
You usually don't speak.
I usually don't speak, but I just gotta say this just for food for thought. Because I have a pretty strong background in pre-press. I've spent a lot of time doing a lot of printing work and a lot of electronic pre-press work, a lot of scanning, a lot of color correcting, a lot of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So I've been on top of that industry for many years. I've kind of watched it evolve from the olden days into what it's become now. So when these guys started throwing numbers around for $8,000, $7,000, $8,000 scanner, I couldn't help but poke around and do a little research myself because that seemed rather high to me.
Mhm.
And the first thing that came up for large format blueprint scanners were $1,500, $2,500, $2,600. Yeah, you can buy a $7,000 blueprint scanner, but
Do you
it's
need
only
a,
going to be worth $7,000 for a year or so. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That
Yeah.
technology is so rapidly It's like cell phones. It's so rapidly decreasing in value that I was blown away that they were thinking about spending $8,000 on a scanner. So it's just that you may be able to, with further research and a little bit.
They might have just threw that number out there.
No,
That's-
they do
that was
exist, and
actually
there might
based
be a
upon
reason why
quotes.
you need an $8,000 scanner. I don't really know, but I know that I've done a ton of scanning, and I would not want to shortchange the town of Hadley by suggesting that you save money and cut corners and buy a cheaper scanner, but you know, there might be some middle ground there.
Yeah,
Just an observation.
okay,
No, it's worth
thank
looking
you.
into.
Did that
Worth
money
looking-
also
worth looking into.
include the
Worth looking
warm
into.
body to run the scanner?
All I have is a couple of quotes from the planning board on this one. I've sent the paperwork to them for them to amplify their request. I was just informing you that there's this request for $7,600 that may be out there. And that's, Terry, that's what I was saying is that we should actually give the planning board an opportunity to make their case before we make a decision about the deployment of that money.
But why are they coming and asking for it to be through a transfer like now instead of like the clerk putting in, oh, I need a new machine, she puts in 6,500,
Yeah.
needs a new machine and she puts it in here, and then
Yeah.
we say, oh, well, we could take it out of capital. Why aren't we, that's a piece of machinery too. Why aren't we doing the same thing as we're doing with her machine?
Right. Now, that's a very fair question, and I'm sure they'll be happy to talk to you about that one.
Yeah.
So changing gears, I thought I remember last time talk on water and sewer rates.
Yes.
Was that on the board for this town meeting?
That's on
So maybe
the,
significant
that's on the,
impact.
on the menu for this, the third with the select board, and they'll be taking a vote. That doesn't go to town meeting.
But presumably if they raise that, that's a significant amount of additional revenue?
Yes.
That's
How
in the
much is
enterprise
significant?
fund.
Depends on,
enterprise fund.
depends on
That's
where they
right.
go and what they wanna do, but it could be as much as $100,000 for each of the enterprise funds.
But
That
presumably,
that doesn't help you with your problem here.
but would those enterprise funds relieve pressure elsewhere in the budget? It's used, but
It doesn't help you with your immediate problem, but if you don't raise your rates, the last time the water rates were raised was in 2007, sewer rates in 2008. We're 10 years down the line. We haven't done anything about the rates since then. Costs go up, revenues stay flat. At some point, you're gonna be in a situation where you're gonna have to use tax money to subsidize the water and sewer, because you've run out of money in the water and sewer.
plus
So
right now it's
that's
completely
that's
out
what.
of enterprise.
So that's why we're trying to address this right now, to avoid that future.
But that's still in the enterprise world,
Yeah,
so
right.
that's not helping us.
That's
with the
not
chief.
helping you here. So that sounds like 170 is the target.
Yeah, I think
I have to
so.
do some homework and I'll be back in touch with you. I'll take the liberty of posting you for
The first,
the first and the third.
yep,
Oh, good.
and then hopefully you
It'll
come-
all come together. It's like whipping whipped cream, isn't it? You beat it and beat it and beat it, it's still creamy. Beat it some more, it's still cream. Beat it, and suddenly,
it's butter.
there you go. Yeah, it's butter.
It would be nice if we had, if we could do it after we know what our funds are gonna be. It would simplify
Oh, that would
things.
be so sweet. That would.
Yeah,
make-
so why is the calendar to me seems like it's really wacko
Yeah.
that you're having town meeting before you know what the revenue is, and you have elections for select board a couple of weeks before you go to town meeting. It seems like the whole thing is just crazy.
Yeah, the elections you can do something about. You can change that by a bylaw. In terms of passing your budget, you're required to do so by June 30th, but the state isn't, and that's what always happens. I've seen state numbers bounce around all the way into December before you get your final state revenues. That's a very uncomfortable feeling, but the last time that happened was under the Swift administration.
like
When was that exactly?
Oh, it's before Mitt Romney,
Uh,
after Solucci.
I think you paid
You
way too much
retain too
attention.
much.
Yeah, you need to have like
You need
a little
break.
dump there and get rid of some of that.
Amazing
Get that out of
what you
there.
retain.
Well, I had to live it. You know, you go in front of the voters, you tell them it's a balanced budget, and then you're sweating bullets from April until December, and before you actually know whether that's true or not. So that was a very tough year. Fortunately, we don't see that these days, and with the Baker administration and with the Patrick administration and the Romney administration, they got these things done in July.
All right, well, should we adjourn and see
Okay.
you guys on Monday? And
Yeah,
David, thank you for putting in the extra effort to.
Oh, you're welcome.
And, you know, I know we all look at this budget, but really, if we could come to the table on Monday, like I've been literally, this is why I'm asking these questions, not targeting anybody, but, you know, really look at the budget, each individual budgets and see.
Well, but the problem is when I look at those numbers on the sheet, there's no way for me to know what's fluff and what's not fluff, right?
Well, you can go back and look at several years worth, you know, it tells you, right?
Right. So unless the number changes drastically,
Mhm.
then there's no other information, right? A number could change drastically, and then he can come back and say, well, yeah, that's because they needed, you know,
And this
a
is
new
also
whatever.
where, I'll give you an example of things that I look at in targeting any department. You look at Park and Rec, you look at the senior center, and you look at,
Sarah, can you let Valerie see you?
She has to see
Oh,
your
yeah, that's
look
data.
at the senior center and Park and Rec, and you see that they both have coordinators.
Mhm.
They're part-time. Can you, you know, so you look at all the departments, and this is why I keep asking, you're already paying benefits for one, you know, we share resources rather than going out and hiring each individual? So that's the things that I look at, and you
So to
know,
that credit, I've been going over line by line, looking at the year over year and everything like that, and we do need to do our due diligence, but I mean, from what I've seen, at least with your administrative recommendations, like you've trimmed it down, you've found many of the opportunities. So that
Mhm.
isn't to say we shouldn't, but I think that to David's credit, he's done a great job at finding 90%
I'm not
or
saying he
more.
hasn't done a great job. I'm saying that these departments themselves should be coming up, these are their budgets that they bring to him. And they should be thinking
Well,
about
so
it.
one thing
It's
that
a town commitment, not just his commitment or us or the select board.
Well, one of the things I thought was really odd is, as I sat through the process this year, is that I would be sitting in the back there with some of the other finance committee members at the select board meeting, and various department heads would come in and, you know, tell why they needed this or that or the other thing. And everybody kind of just, you know, nods their head and says, thank you very much for coming. And not one single budget got changed during that period.
Mhm.
And so it seemed very ceremonial to me, quite boring actually. So I think a change in the process there would be, before they come to select board meeting, they have to come to finance committee meeting, and then they really have to justify and explain to us why that line is like it is. And it's not gonna be, oh, you know, ha ha ha, thank you very much for coming, joke around, meeting adjourned. They're gonna have to actually, you know, prove what they do, and you know, justify what they do. And some people came with the numbers that you had, and some people came with their own numbers. And I was like, well, what's the difference between the book? You know, the book seemed to me to be the gold standard.
Yeah.
But then they would hand you out, like if I go through this, I have all these handouts that people showed up with. And that's now, how did that happen, you know?
I
And
think that's a very good idea.
I want to meet with each department head and find out what's going on, like we did tonight with the chief.
Well, we used to do that right before budget season,
Yeah.
right in budget season.
It makes it very long. It was a lot
Long
of hours.
process.
We've already done a lot of hours, and it was a lot of hours last year
Yeah.
before we went. It was, we committed 2 months worth of our Saturdays, and it was like, we're
Yeah, it
talking
was
4 to 6
crazy.
hours sometimes. I mean, it was 4 hours,
Well-
many meetings, I would say. Because it was like a half a day.
So
We were meeting on Saturdays and
I'm
during
on-
the day during the week
I'm a
too.
different school of thought, is that I would actually like us to get farther and farther away from line item budgets and start talking about functionality rather than bottom lines. So, but that's a dream of mine.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so a lot of towns don't submit a line-by-line budget. So you get one number for police rather than 28 numbers.
Right.
And then the budget discussion is really about how many patrols do you have? What's your enforcement strategy? What kind of crime statistics are you seeing? Is there a change from year to year? That's really the discussion. What do you need in order to support a goal of reducing shoplifting by 10%? I'm just making this up. What do we do about the panhandlers out there? Is there a solution?
Tax them.
So, I mean, that's how a lot of towns address their budget, is that they're not thinking about, okay, so how much did you spend for postage last year? You know, what do you do? What's your function? What's your mission statement? What are the resources that you need in order to achieve the goals that we've set for you for next year?
So you essentially let your department heads, shape it, you trust them to use their funds.
You should have
Optimally.
you should have a stack of books this thick to tell you if you have a question of how much postage did you spend. You should be able to get to that information. But the finance committee and the select board are really focused in on functions rather than line items. That's my school of thought. But
Now, currently
agree.
now, if they have, so say, within their budget, they have line items. So in their budget, and they were short in one area, but never used the other, they can move the money within themselves, can't they?
up to a point, yes.
Right, but other than that, they have to come to us, right, for a transfer?
Right.
I don't agree with that.
Well, that's the law.
Well, I feel like the bottom line of their budget is if they're in the positive,
Mhm.
regardless of what line item it comes from,
Mhm.
they should have the right to move it around.
Yeah, up to a point they can do that.
Right.
You're such a weird mix of liberal and conservative. It makes me weird. Like some things you're like conservative on, other things you're liberal on, and you go back and forth, giving me whiplash.
You know where I work. In case my boss is watching.
In case my boss is watching.
So it sounded like you all wanted to go home.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, but we
Do
also want to
you?
make sure we get something done too.
We want to
so-
make sure that this isn't gonna happen again on what?
Well, and I
Monday?
think that we need to go back to if it takes time, it takes time. And maybe what maybe what we need is a rubric for those department heads that when they come in here, they have to have this, and that, and the other thing ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's not just gonna be all fluffy pants stuff. and then-
Fluffy pants.
Just remember that we're volunteers as well.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to give time because I committed to this.
Well, that's why I said they have to have a rubric so that they're not gonna come in, it's not gonna take 4 hours. It's like,
Mhm.
it's gotta be streamlined for that. That's why we have to come up with some guidelines for them, so when they come in here, that,
Mhm.
and then the other thing that has to happen that I think is a little bit strange is like, take this North Hadley fire substation thing as an example. It was passed in town meeting, so now we're building it, and it's gonna cost this much money, and we have to borrow it, and the taxpayers are gonna pay for it, and,
Well, can I say something on behalf of that?
well, I'm
At
using.
least we came with a solid number, where the senior center had no solid numbers.
Well, but that's,
And you voted on it.
well, I was using that as an example, because now we're in a situation where
Well, you
we
can't-
probably could have made a much better decision based on that.
Well, here was the problem
And
with,
you probably could have made a much better decision on the senior center
yeah,
as well. We sat up there, we didn't agree, but you had 150 townspeople come in, and they come in when they want something, okay, to get that passed. Do I think they need it? absolutely. I think the building needs to be built. I am for shared buildings.
Yeah, one big building is a lot better than 3 small ones.
Right, but you have the senior center who doesn't want to share with even Park and Rec. Okay, so you got your seniors that don't want to share, you got your library doesn't want to share. With this grant, they can't. But who's to say, why do we need a grant if we're gonna have a shared building, right?
Well,
So
I mean-
there's a lot, and that's why I brought it up, one meeting here.
Yeah.
To your selectman that was sitting there and said, who makes the decisions on what the buildings are used for or how they're used? And it's the select board. We can vote it in, but ultimately, right, is this what my understanding was?
It's their building.
It's their building. So here, you wanna know my philosophy? You put the seniors on the first floor, this library on the second, and you add a little third floor with a rear entrance for Park and Rec.
that's fine with me.
Okay. But that's not the way they voted it.
But aren't these somewhat decided by the kinds of grants that are available when they're having the ideas?
Well, there's
You know,
no,
like there was one idea where they were gonna combine the senior center and the library, wasn't there? And that was because that's the way the grant was
Written.
offered from the state, and they ended up not doing it.
well, because there's no guarantee we're gonna get that grant to begin with, and just because we get it, doesn't mean we have to use it. You see what I'm saying? So if you have a shared building, maybe the library's gonna cost $8,000 for an example, and 4 is coming from the state, but yet we could build it on our own for the 4 that we're gonna put into it if it's a shared building, so why would you need their money? Right, it's a matching grant, so you have to match what they give you. Who's to say we need to take that? Right? I mean, that's just my
So basically what
opinion.
you're saying is it's up to a small number of people who show up to vote.
Exactly, that's the way it is.
So that's a leadership issue.
I don't know, that's just the town
Well, but
and how the government is set up.
Well, but it's, if, for the people to come and vote on it, that had to be set up that way so that they could vote on it, right?
Mhm.
So I don't, it seems like it wasn't set up properly in the first place.
Well, the vote is only for them to apply as far as the library.
No, but like, let's go back to the senior center. I mean, what I understood was that, do we want to have a senior center? And the people who really wanted a senior center all showed up and voted. And so now we have this liability of a senior center.
It also went to a townwide ballot too, so.
Yeah, it went to a ballot after,
Yeah, so
how many
What's a
people-
townwide ballot as opposed to a vote?
Well,
So
it draws more
There
people.
were 2 votes on the senior center and fire substation. One was the town meeting vote to authorize the borrowing contingent upon a debt exclusion override. Then in January 2017, there was the 9 votes, the 9 ballot questions that was voted on by
Right,
anybody in town who had. So it wasn't just a matter of town meeting was packed on this particular day by these particular
Well, it also
people.
depends on how the ballot's written. If it says, do you wish to have a senior center? If you do, your tax rate will go up this much,
Yeah,
and then see how many people put their X on the thing.
well, it wasn't.
Always
written
tie
that
the
way.
funding to the opportunity so that
Yeah.
they can see that if they're gonna check that box, it's gonna cost that much money.
well, we actually did that. We sent it out as a mail-in.
Yeah.
Because the Department of Revenue really controls the language of the ballot vote, so we can't put in those numbers. But we sent an informational mailing out like a couple weeks beforehand. And yellow sheet of paper that had a little box that said, this is the impact, this is what it means.
See, I don't even remember that little sheet.
Yeah,
It was an estimated number, I mean, that
Yeah,
number is
it's
not
a-
guaranteed.
no, it's estimated, and we have a lot of debt coming off, so just because it's said,
But I guess the point is that I think people don't get it that, if they do that, see, because it seems like, every time I say the word, well, we need to have an override to pay for the fire department, or we need to have an override for this or an override for that, no one wants to ever say those words, but it seems like it flew through town meeting for the senior center.
I'm not for not having an override, but what I'm saying is make it so everything that needs to get done, IT and whatever else, make
Yeah, I
this-
agree with that, make it a big
make
package
this
deal.
government I mean, this town run efficiently, just don't keep hitting it one thing here, one thing there, bring it as.
Well,
a
right, but it
picture,
seems
whole
like
picture.
that's what's happened in the past, right? You had the fire substation and you had the senior center, and now the library. You know, they have that grant out. They want to have a new library. I have no objection to a new
They
library.
did it all at once though,
Well, but see, that's the thing. Why was it all at once?
that's because.
Because they put a petition out and you
they
can't do
put a
anything about a
petition
petition.
out.
Right, so they put so someone put a petition. Plus, the other thing was, it was just, there was two things that really caused it. One is they wanted to sell North Hadley Hall.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as they decided to do that, and that started the domino effect, which then caused the fire department to not have that space anymore. If they weren't gonna have that space, where are we gonna rent the space
And
to
house
house
our
that truck,
equipment.
the stuff that's there, because it won't fit. So then they looked for land, and that got shot down, because why do you wanna purchase another piece of land when you already own a piece of land?
Mm-hmm.
So, but then the library came up, and so the library wanted that space where the seniors were. So they got shot down because the seniors all came and they said, no, you're not kicking us out, and it got voted down. They came back the next year, but got the seniors all all going gung-ho,
Yeah.
got them there, and they helped with it, and then now the seniors are okay with giving up their space because they're gonna get a new place.
And the library
But if-
moved right in.
Right, but it was started because the library wanted their space.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. They wanted that particular building,
Mm-hmm.
which it was just the domino effect. And it is still gonna become the domino effect, because as soon as you kick you move that one, well, it's housing more than one department. So now we gotta find that department. Next thing you know, someone else is Park and Rec's gonna need a space, and they're gonna say, oh, well, we'll build another building over here. So I mean, when we started to see it happen right in the beginning, many times it was mentioned about the sharing of spaces, but it just didn't seem to go. There was too many roadblocks. And
Yeah, but your select board,
Respectfully, I'll make a motion to adjourn, just for David and
No.
Hadley Media.
oh,
Oh,
okay,
I didn't hear what
adjourn.
you said,
I
I'm sorry.
second it.
he wants to
Motion
go.
to
home.
adjourn.
Let's go home.
David used to this. I second that.
Okay, third. Let's go home.
All right, good.